Hi guys, welcome to the Spoken Podcast. This is episode 5. I'm Gareth and I'm here today with Kieren, one of our hairdressing educators. Kieren, how are we, mate?
Hi Gareth, good, thank you.
Get
All right,
yourself nice and comfortable, mate. Get nice and relaxed, you know?
I will. First time on a podcast.
I was
so-
actually going to say that. I
Yeah.
was like, is this your first podcast?
Yeah,
Great.
it is.
Well, this is my 5th and I'm still shitting bricks. So It's
Okay.
great, right? As everyone knows, I love talking in front of a camera. So I'm very much like Mum. We're both the same. We're like, I hate doing
I was going to
stuff
say,
like
you
this.
can put me in front of like as many people if I'm
People?
like cutting in a shop or in like a class or anything. Then as soon as you stick a camera in front of me,
it's like,
I start tensing up a little
I know,
bit.
which
But
is-
we'll just forget it's
which
there.
is funny because the last like 3 weeks, that's all we've been doing
I know, yeah.
is videoing.
And you
which is
can't
fantastic.
shut us up when we're like,
I know.
when
then
the
we just
camera's
get
not
out
here.
there. Well, it's funny because Pete, who will edit this podcast, will also edit our videos, and I'm sure he'll just be like,
oh,
I should have just given you microphones because we talk so much.
Totally.
All right, so what we'll start off with, we'll do a bit of an icebreaker. So we'll go through our top 5 songs. So Kieran's going to go first, and then I'm going to do another top 5 as well, like I do every week. So go on, Kiz.
Okay,
Pump it up.
easy. Just jotted these down earlier. So rather than my favorite 5 songs of all time, I've actually just gone through my Spotify and looked at pretty much the 5 songs that I've been playing on repeat lately.
Love it.
So it's very eclectic. If you have a terrible taste in music, you probably have a bit in common with me with some of these songs. So I'll start from number 1, Pure Morning by Placebo. So one of my favorites of all time. We've got Go Get a Tattoo by Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes. Nike's On by Healy. 10 Minutes by the Get Up Kids. And I threw a bit of trash in there with Billy from 6ix9ine.
It's a bit of trash.
Just
in
to
there. I
spice
love
things
that.
up a little bit.
I love it. It's so funny. Like, I think we're pretty similar with the music stuff. One day we'll come here and it'll be like, yeah, let's listen to this. And then
Yeah.
the next day it's like, no, we're changing it up. And it'll just be like,
Yeah.
people will walk in, the students will walk in and they're like, what's going on here? Like, why are we listening to this? And me and you are just like, yep.
Yeah,
This is it. You
Bit of
and I,
50 Cent
sorry.
the other day.
I know. Oh, I got proper 50 Cent mode. Hence my top 5. I've been proper like R&B and rap at the moment. I don't know why. Maybe it's just like a January thing. You know what I mean? All right. So I've started off with Jay-Z, Big Pimpin'. I've got Drake, Way Too Sexy, which is pretty new. Normally I'm not like in with the new stuff, but Drake and Kanye at the moment been pretty good. So I got Ja Rule, Living It Up, absolute classic. Gin and Juice by Snoop Dogg, and then I've got Many Men by 50 Cent. Is that your phone?
It's my alarm, yeah.
What to wake up?
I had a nap the other day and I set it before I was supposed to come here.
This can stay in the podcast. This is amazing. Anyway, good times. All right, let's get into it. So,
Okay.
kids, let's talk about obviously upbringing in Adelaide. Let's
Yes.
talk about a bit of the childhood, Adelaide in general, your thoughts of it. Obviously, here on the coast now, and then kind of like your pathway into this lovely
Absolutely.
education.
Yeah. I
sector
think
as
that'll
well.
be, it's a cool story because I guess like my childhood and kind of some of my experiences from early childhood into like teenage and early 20s all kind of led up to me being in the hair industry in the first place. So it's kind of an interesting story. I guess like grew up in suburbs in Adelaide, spent my whole life pretty much in Adelaide. Only child, was a pretty shy kid.
Yep.
So pretty introverted like in my younger years. And throughout the course of like my hairdressing career, I've completely transcended that, which has been pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess I took an interest in hairdressing from the age of, it would have had to have been about 11 or 12.
What was the interest?
Well, a super fussy kid to begin with, like always aesthetic based.
Yeah.
So from a young age, I was big into hair, big into like style, even if it was just like a school uniform or something like that, right? So super fussy from that. And I guess like being an only child, I didn't have that, I guess that kind of like older brother type figure in my life, again, being pretty introverted.
Yeah.
And I think my first experience or my first interaction with someone that I kind of seen as, I guess like an older brother figure, was actually my barber, and I would have been about 12 at this point. And it was really cool. So he actually, I think that kind of, that interest in the industry stemmed from genuinely that interaction that I had with this guy. His name was Michael, and I doubt he would remember me. I think we crossed paths like when I was about 20, and actually did remember me. He's
going to reply back to this on
YouTube. It would
be
funny.
Be like,
I'd be surprised, but anyway, you know, he kind of took me in. I used to go up to like the local shops, and he was the first one to give me a cool haircut and actually take me seriously.
Yeah, cool.
Like prior to that, it was just like me being a young kid, getting taken like to the hairdresser by mum, getting my sideburns cut up half side of my head.
I was going to say, what was the style? What style were you getting?
Yeah, at that point it was we're running some pretty heavy gel at that point.
Sick.
So it was like a short back and sides with, you know, the twist spikes and that type of thing. But I did it pretty well.
Are we going to bring that back? So do we bring that back?
I'm trying to phase it out.
I love
it. So that was my first experience. I used to really look forward to going to see him.
Yep.
I don't know, he's just a cool dude, and like we used to chat about girls and that type of thing, and like, you know, I was still pretty shy at that point, but he used to hook me up with cool haircuts, and I guess that's where my interest stemmed. And then through high school, again, still in Adelaide at this point. You know, I was the first one out of my mates to, typically most hairdressers would probably have this in common. Started cutting my friend's hair, started cutting my own hair through high school, that type of thing. During that period, it was all about, well, for me and my friends, all about the emo fringes and all that type of scene.
Been there.
So, and then, I mean, anyone in the industry over 10 years would resonate with this. That hairdressing was never really a cool thing to get into as a guy, like going back 10, 15 plus years ago, right?
Yeah.
So through high school, I also was interested in graphic design.
Yep.
So I followed that throughout like later years in high school, studied that for a little bit at TAFE.
Awesome.
All while kind of pushing to the side that I actually wanted to do hairdressing, right?
Yep.
So studied design for a year, and then pretty much just got up and left one day and got into hairdressing at about 19. I'm 31 now.
Yep.
So did a year course similar to like, you know, what you guys run here.
Yep.
Which is really cool for me to now be a part of.
Absolutely.
On the other side of that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's kind of
full 360.
Personally, it changed my life doing that course. It was really cool. And then basically worked my way through the hairdressing industry, finished my apprenticeship through a salon in Adelaide, salon called Portobello. Richard Tucker was my boss. So he was awesome. He was another really strong male figure in my life that kind of guided me through some of those first early years of hairdressing. And then kind of transitions probably more so into cutting focused, then eventually into owning my own shops. Worked through the small business grind for several years before moving here to the coast.
Living the dream, right?
Yeah.
Small business grind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know, which we all really want to achieve, which is...
It's aged me about a decade.
Yeah, I know. Hey, same, mate. Join the club. I used to look young. That's why I have to have baby face shape. So people think I'm out. All right, let's talk about the one thing which I was really interested about is hearing people's kind of experience with the first shop that they went into, right? Like Brooke was like, on our previous podcast, the first shop was like so different to her second shop.
100%.
Like, so it's
first
very...
shops are special as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're the worst ones by far, but they just have that, I don't know, that special place in your heart, I guess.
So because I know you're like, and this is what I think the students love about you, as well as what obviously we find very good about the way that you're educated in. You know, like what you're very passionate about. You know your skill set, if that makes sense. And you're like, I want to teach that. Like, I'm so passionate about that. Yeah. How was that? I mean, did you have that when you first started? And is that something which the salon kind of bled into you? Or was it just something on the side where you're like, I'm really interested in this, but I've got to do this to kind of blend in with the salon?
That's a really interesting question, because I would say I've always had my niche, even from before I was,
actually working in a salon.
Yeah.
So even when I was studying, I knew what I liked what I liked, and I kind of essentially just wanted to do that. But through studying hairdressing, you've got to fulfill the full spectrum of hairdressing, right? So you can't get away with just doing your kind of small slice of what you're interested in. And I mean, that didn't make sense to me at the start, right? I only wanted to do what I wanted to do, pretty stubborn, pretty tunnel vision, right?
Yep.
But I was forced into having to do, every area I had to do, like color, styling, like anything from, which is funny. People wouldn't picture me doing this type of thing now because of the type of work that I do and the business that I've had. But even like round brush blow dries, setting hair, perming, right, classic foiling, blow dries, and I couldn't be more grateful for having to have gone through that, because it's rounded me out skill set wise. Yeah. Now later in my career, fast forward through businesses and 10 plus years later, now that I do have a niche, not only can I bring a higher skill set to it, I can essentially just round out the spectrum of what I can offer my clients. Yeah. And it's only made me stronger in the area that, I've chosen to go down.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one that I try and tell this to students, and I think again it's really helped that you've jumped on board, because you do say that it's like, the Cert 3 which we teach hairdressing or barbering, we have to stick to guidelines on that. Yeah. But I would like to think as a college, I had this conversation again today with somebody, it's like what we do is way above and beyond what the package says to do.
Definitely, yeah.
Think about the night class that we teach together.
Almost unexpectedly so.
100%.
Even for myself coming on, I was quite impressed by like the curriculum that you teach here, just based on, it reminds me of the way I studied. I assumed just coming to like a typical, just viewing barber colleges as they generally are. It's usually a very short course. It's usually very specific, and it doesn't really tick many of the boxes that are actually involved in the actual craft of hairdressing itself. So it's probably one of my favorite things about this academy here, actually, in the curriculum. So
I love that.
It's pretty
That's
impressive.
Good feedback. And I haven't paid him to say that, believe it or not, which is fantastic. Yeah. So I probably should have. Well, now I'm going to have to, now, aren't I? So, all right. One thing I asked Mum, again, I am not saying you've got the many years as Mum has. Like, it was all black and white when Mum was doing hairdressing.
I only caught the last little bite of that. Yeah. Really. Yeah. But enough to kind of,
So what's kind of your major things which you think has changed in the industry from when you started to what you're kind of seeing? Now, I know we speak about this all the time.
Yeah, many things.
So, I don't know, maybe narrow it down to like 3 things which you're like, sure. That kind of sticks out.
For sure. And I'm kind of thinking on the fly here, but I'll do my best. But I was weirdly having a conversation with a client today, just in the shop. And he was not in the field of hairdressing. He was in the IT business, right? But he'd been doing whatever he's been doing for like 20 years. And we were talking, and I've been doing, 10 plus years in the industry. And I was saying, if you're doing anything, any craft, any job, any career for like 10 years plus, you see a certain evolution of it. Yep. And you almost see, after the 10-year mark, you not only see an evolution and a change, but you almost start to see the pendulum start to swing back. Yep. Right. And it's really, really weird. You can't foresee that when you first start out.
Absolutely.
So it's changed heaps. I guess the most obvious point would be now everything's really barber focused. Yeah. Right. And as I mentioned about my progression through getting into hairdressing, where 10 plus years ago it wasn't seen as a cool thing to do. In fact, it was like the opposite of a cool thing to do. Yeah. Hairdressing was like a backup plan. Absolutely. Right? And typically for guys in general, if you're going into hairdressing, it wasn't seen as, I guess, like a cool thing to do. So, so the focus has changed. The perception on the job and the title itself has changed. I would say the training itself's changed quite a bit as well. Yeah. Yeah.
I would as well. Yeah. I would 100%. Like, from the outside looking in, I would say that massively. And that's one thing which we are trying to change here. Trying our best anyway. Question, you just mentioned it then. What's it like being a male in the hairdressing industry?
It's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it opens you up to different energies probably that you commonly wouldn't get in your typical trades.
Absolutely.
Right, as a guy.
Absolutely.
But again, like segue into how that's helped me round out as just a person in general, as well as a hairdresser. But it basically forces you into coming up as a teenager through high school and even in your early 20s, you're pretty specific about the people you put yourself around, right? You've got your small group of friends, you've got your small school, that type of thing.
Yep.
Going to the hairdressing industry, you're now coming into contact, not only contact, but one-on-one contact in a service-based, like, so you've got to accommodate not only male and female, but also all age groups, all professions, kids, families, and you essentially become... And I find that this is different to the barbershop kind of client relationship. Whereas in the hairdressing, it's like, because you are seeing both male and female, old and young, that type of thing, you really do become part of people's lives.
Absolutely.
And it sounds so cheesy, but it is the case. You know, when you've been at a salon long enough or had a client base for long enough, you almost become a part of like the family, right? You start seeing they start bringing all their network to you.
Yep.
You get to know each other. You see each other once a month, once every couple of weeks or whatever.
Yep.
And you really form like a cool relationship with your clientele and I guess and their network. So
absolutely,
yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that's something that I've enjoyed out of the industry, and yeah.
From an outsider looking in, I know a lot of people, I think personally, give males a lot of stick for being hairdressers.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But it's funny. I spoke to somebody today about it, and I'm not going to say that person so she doesn't get in trouble. But she said to me, she goes, "My preference would be to have a male hairdresser, right?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, why is that?" And she goes, "Well, like they know what they want to see, if that makes sense. They're like, girls would go, oh yeah, that could look alright," but she was saying that's a guy going, that would suit you massively
for sure.
And some girls want to hear that. They want to go like, oh well, that's a guy saying, you'd look amazing with I don't know, like a face frame or something like that.
Absolutely.
like what we were just literally speaking about. So yeah, it's a very interesting point, because an outsider looking in, I'd go, what a sleaze. But then it's not. It's like, that makes so much sense. Like, it's the same as, I suppose, I mean, I remember, like, I'd always used to ask girls, how do you think I should do my hair?
Yeah.
But I'd never go to a girl barber.
You know, also, a side note from that as well, like, segue into this, though, from that, is that it's also a really nice angle to, you genuinely develop, like, platonic connections with your female clientele as well as your male clientele, but it's a really cool angle. Like it's really nice just to have a clientele, a mixed clientele.
Absolutely.
And kind of, I don't know, how you end up talking to your clients about things that you probably wouldn't talk to with your own friends and your own family and that type of thing, and likewise especially with them to you. So there's something about the hairdresser to client relationship that's even kind of like transcends like male and female kind of interaction, or male to male. It's just like it's kind of it's an isolated relationship.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really cool. And it's like it's nice. It's nice to get a different perspective as well, I think, from the clients. And as a male hairdresser, you've got to break down a few boundaries and break down a few barriers and that type of thing. And you face a little bit of judgment, definitely like in the earlier years for sure. But I mean, that's kind of what makes it cool, I think. So, I mean,
I find it funny because, like, we've had Zoe and Ruby on here. Ruby was our first guest, and I asked exactly the same thing. I was like, what's it like being in an industry which is massively male dominated? And it's funny because...
It's funny, actually. Sorry to cut you off, but it's now the same thing. It's actually, the pendulum swung, and it's exactly. As you're probably about to say, but it's the same for now females going into the barbering industry, which is now more and more starting to get into, which is really cool, which is why I think it's actually all coming back to the unisex salon. But now I believe they're facing their version of that. They're being like females in the barbering industry are facing their version of what it used to be like for a male going to the hairdressing industry.
Absolutely.
Being predominantly like,
like,
run by
I
females.
I don't want her to cut my hair. I don't want him to cut my hair.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I mean,
especially as like a young guy in his early 20s, piercings, like skinny kid, black hair,
yeah,
like, and then you're working in a high-end salon with like, say, you know, cashed up, like slightly older women,
yeah,
right? It's like, I mean, you're facing a diverse boundary just there. So having to kind of like break through that, it really kind of helps you hone in on your, I don't know, your social skills and your social intelligence and that type of thing, and helps you develop as a person. But you got to confront a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It gave me a load of like, I know it sounds stupid, but I was very shy. I had no confidence whatsoever growing up. It's like around my mates and stuff. Yeah, it was sweet, but random. I could never go up to a girl and talk to them unless I was extremely pissed and stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
But starting to cut hair.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did personal training for 5 years, and still I was like, if there was a girl client, I was like extremely awkward because I couldn't relate to anything that they were relating to. And then when I started cutting hair, it was like I can cut a girl's hair now, and I would just be like, as if I'm talking here, which is crazy.
And I think it's something about the act or the service of cutting someone's hair or styling someone or improving someone's aesthetic, right? Because there's a certain level of awareness and empathy that has to go into that, and a certain level of connection you've got to have with the client, right? And it's like that in itself breaks down boundaries, and you kind of it allows you to connect with your client, and then you're able to just see each other and speak to each other as as hairdresser to client, right? And those kind of insecurities or awkwardness or anything like that we generally face, like on day to day in just general interactions, that kind of is put to the side. Yeah. So that's one thing I've found as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got an interesting question.
Yeah.
Which I just thought off the top of my head, as all of my questions are.
So are my answers.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So one thing which I think struggles in the barber industry, again, I'm not blaming the barbers, but a lot of that client interaction where I know you're very good at it with your consultation, and you'll go, I think this will work. And a lot of the time the client will go, I trust you.
For sure.
Do it.
And that's one thing that, like, probably my favorite thing to hear in general is I trust you. And I hear that quite a bit, like, through my clients. And it's I guess it's not only the way you carry yourself, but that kind of ties back into kind of having that social awareness, that empathy, and being able to be comfortable in a certain scenario, be confident in what you do.
I know one thing which I would love you to explain is how do you get your clients to trust you with what you say, right? I've heard you speak to clients, obviously, so I know why they do, but what would be kind of one of your tips, advice, whatever, in your consultation process to kind of be like, trust me, I know what's good for you. If that
for
makes
sure.
sense.
No, it definitely makes sense. It's a hard one to break down and simplify, because it's all comes into interaction and communication is nuanced. Right. And it's different for everyone. And I feel like, through many channels, you can find your own brand of communication, your own style of communication, people to communicate with. But through hairdressing, that's definitely, it's definitely a job or a service that basically you're forced into doing. Right. And to be a successful hairdresser or barber, you have to be good at it.
Absolutely.
Because half the job is the craft, and half the job is client retention and client management and just general social skills. So I would say, above all, it's confidence in what you're doing. Okay, so it's confidence in your skill set, and your general confidence in, I guess, being able to fulfill your clients' like wishes, right? I would say to gain trust, it's also listening. So you've got to be able to listen to your client. You've got to be able to put yourself in their shoes to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
Keep in mind, you've got to be able to do this all over about 15 seconds.
Yes.
So we're going quite in depth with this, right? But like after doing this job or this service, craft, whatever, for so long, it's like you develop the skill, and it is really important part of the job. You develop this skill, you'll be able to do this quite transparently and quite quickly and quite naturally. So almost to answer this question, I've almost got to backtrack, put myself back into my own shoes, maybe like 5-10 years ago.
Yep.
When I was that awkward young kid
100%.
stressing out in the back room, stressing out about every client coming in, right? And you do transcend that eventually. But I would say the client needs to be aware that they've been listened to a certain degree. You've understood it. You can not only relay it back, but you can relay it back with some professional direction on top of that. Yeah. So, for example, if someone comes in, I can generally pick up straight away whether there's someone that is looking for direction, or they're looking to, take the lead a little bit. And either way, regardless of those two angles, I generally direct it back into me kind of taking the lead. Yep. Because essentially that's what they're there for. And it's like a good analogy for that is like, it's hard to compare these two professions, but you don't go to a doctor and prescribe your own medication.
Exactly.
Right? Hypothetically. It's like, and it's the same with hairdressing. It's like, why would a bricklayer or a nurse come and see you and tell you what length or what style to cut their hair? Like it just genuinely doesn't make sense.
Absolutely.
So once you get that into your head, and that was something that, I was fortunate enough to have really, really good training going through my hairdressing apprenticeship. I worked for a really good salon with a really good boss, and we trained on a lot of we did mock consultations all the time. We did so much more training and in-depth training than just generally hair cutting.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
And that's something that I'd like to bring back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's what sets you apart from in the industry, and definitely sets you above I guess this new kind of wave of quick fix barbering and that type of thing.
Yeah. So
the reality of it, the reality of the situation is you can't learn a craft, and quite a hard one at that. It's not an easy craft. And
Absolutely.
And you can't learn all of these nuanced ideas in the space of a 6-week course. You can get a taste of it for sure, but this is something that I've developed over years. I would never have seen myself for the first 6 years of hairdressing, I would never have seen myself owning a shop. I wouldn't even place myself there.
Yeah.
I was still doing the bare bones. I definitely wouldn't have seen myself educating. I'd go to a lot of seminars, but I could never put myself in their shoes, seeing myself in front of people. So it's something, that confidence, it genuinely only comes with years of repetition and years of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. Absolutely. And years of just genuine practice at your craft and that type of thing. So
yeah, that's the one thing I really worry about is, you get a lot of people going like, oh, hairdressing's easy. And I'm like,
it's because a good hairdresser makes it look easy.
Exactly.
Right? And it looks fun. And it is fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun job. It's still hard. Yeah.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah. Hit me.
And I think I kind of know what your answer will be, but I'm interested to hear. So I think a lot of people think hairdressing's easy because people put up 30-second reels of them going from looking like that tree to looking like Jennifer Aniston. And it's like, it took 30 seconds. It was amazing. I mixed something in a bowl and like that. So I think a lot of people do think that.
100%.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting one, but
and that's I guess they don't see the back end of it, which we certainly do, which is the other end of that camera. There's about 45 tint bowls. The salon's a mess. We've been here for 6 hours.
Yeah, no lunch.
No.
Yeah,
doing it for free to get content. That's that side of things to provide that insight into the industry. But yeah, that's going to create, and that's the downside, or one of the downsides of social media platforms and the way they kind of distort how much work goes into things. And
absolutely.
That type of thing. But it's still cool to see that.
I think it'll change.
I think so too.
I think it's starting to see a little bit of a change already.
Yeah.
All right, you go on.
No, I was going to say, anyone who has taken the course that I've seen so far gets a pretty... it weans out the people that are in it for genuinely because they want to be.
Absolutely.
And the people that are doing it just to jump ship onto something they maybe have perceived as a cool industry to become a part of in the fleeting moment. And as soon as they kind of see the back end to hairdressing, have a conversation like we're having
Yeah,
now
they're
for
like,
2
"Whoa."
seconds, they kind of get a bit of an awakening. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I mean, I remember being in the college with mum when she was training back home when I was like 10 years old. And I always thought, and again, I never admit this to mum, but I was like, geez, what a cool industry. But there was no guys in that industry. Like, there was no guys in the class. It was all girls. And I was kind of thinking, well, how can I go into that? It's obviously just for girls kind of thing. Which I'm glad I didn't go into, but now that's all I want to do is really go into that, which is hilarious. And I suppose that comes with age. Anyway, completely off topic. Let's go. So you've spoken about opening up your own shop and stuff like that. Yeah. Why did you do that for a start?
Good question.
And what was your experience with opening the shop? I know, obviously, but I'd love you to share your story. Because everyone, I mean, you've shared it already. You've only been here a couple of months. You hear how many students go, as soon as I'm qualified, I'm opening up a shop. I'll do this, I'll do that. So
and not that I would advise against that. I would just advise maybe thinking into it a little bit more because of my own experience. And mine's I guess I went the detour version of like the types of shops that I opened, the way I went about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, to start, the reason why I opened my own shop, going back into, having your own style or having your own niche and that type of thing. I always was cutting focused, right? Yeah. I was always unisex. I guess through that attracted a slightly younger, probably more alternative style of hairdressing. Okay. So it's something that didn't fit into barbering. And it definitely didn't, at the time, fit into your general hairdressing salon, right? So I was always in this grey area, which ironically now, the grey area, I feel like that's where it's coming back to. This kind of like
100%.
This neutralised like unisex style of hairdressing, which is so cool. But at the time, it didn't exist really. There was probably a few people doing it, but it definitely didn't exist with any existing salon, from where I was. So I guess after trialing, I worked for several people before I actually opened my own shop. So I'll just put that out there first. It's like, before you make yourself successful, you've got to go through the ranks. You've got to help other people build, right? And then that's the payoff to them educating you and you learning through them. And that's another thing that I think has been forgotten a little bit, right? So you can't just consume knowledge and then just go and be successful at something. There's many steps in between.
Absolutely.
Right? And I did those steps, and I went through, like I said, that year course. I trained through clip joint. So we did Sassoon based training, so very technical style of hairdressing. Worked for, it would have been about at least 4.5 years at Portobello in Adelaide, which was like a nice high end hair salon. Again, lucky enough to have really good training through that. Then from there, I jumped ship eventually, and I was ready to kind of like take a new angle and get more into, I guess, my niche. Right. And just focus in on like, I guess, my angle of hairdressing. And I started working at a smaller salon, a little bit more underground. It was, just a real hipster salon, a lot of uni students, a lot of hospitality workers, a lot of musos, that type of thing. It was linked to a cool cafe. In like the east end of Adelaide, and that was a really cool experience. And that was where I really started doing really cool colors, fashion colors, bleach outs, real edgy cuts.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was still unisex, which was really cool. We just had one pricing system, right? So they were doing that. They were doing that back in the day. That was cool. That was a salon called Das actually. So that was really cool. And then after I left Das was when I took my first business lease, which is my first business that I opened called Crooked. And that was the most interesting kind of, I guess, period earlier on that I had. And that was very character building, very eye-opening. That was my first taste of small business, building my own clientele, being responsible for my own clientele and my own business, my own income and that type of thing. And it was hard work. And I probably had under $10,000 to my name at the time, if that. And I sunk it all into the business, right? I took a sublease. I took a sublease off a little gin bar that had just launched in Adelaide. Really, really cool space. It was a collective space.
It's all upstairs and it's kind of like warehouse style fit out. Done really well, but off the gin bar, it was subdivided into 3 subsequent areas. And so that we had alongside the bar, we had a little food area. Next to that, we had my 2-chair barber studio, which was no bigger than half the size of this back room here. Yep. And then next to me on the other side of the wall, cool in theory, but not cool because I had bass coming through my wall 24/7, was almost like an electronic recording studio, right? And we used to pump, like it used to go, it was the coolest business. Yeah. And and we were all super young. We were all in our 20s, right? And I offset my hours at that business. I was trying to go for a different angle. I was like, wow, how can I make this popular, this tiny little dingy space upstairs, inside a bar, no street side, no street view or anything like that, no walk through traffic. Yeah. The bar wasn't really popular at the time either. So we all built that together. It was really cool. So I marketed that mainly off Instagram. Yep. The angle was there. It was a unisex cutting studio, right? Yep. Sounds a bit cheesy, but I wanted to go for something that was just honed into my niche that I did, right? And I wanted to keep it both male and female. I wanted it just to be cutting, right, which is all I could squeeze into this little space anyway. And I actually offset my hours. So I'd take my first client on my good days at say 2 p.m. Yeah. Right. I was partying a lot of the time. Yeah. Right. I was linked to the hospitality scene. So I was kind of running on hospitality hours there, which was interesting as a hairdresser or a barber. So that was cool in itself. And that kind of, I guess that experience alone, working from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. throughout the week, working inside a bar, working with young demographic, that type of thing, and having to really push my network and build my social medias up and that type of thing, and just have my first experience of marketing something outside of myself. Yeah. That was an interesting experience, and I had that for about 3 years before I moved on to my second business. But that was both successful, but being young and kind of ignorant to a lot of the small business kind of turbulence, I probably didn't do as well as I should have out of it. Yeah. But what I gained from that was just a cool experience.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah. And there is a part of me which thinks I think that is the most important thing. Yeah. Like
I would agree now. Like now in hindsight, after owning businesses, it's like it is the coolest thing. Being able to flick through my iPad and kind of see those old photos of me, like in my first few days with the shonky fit out and just cool clientele, and it's really cool. Yeah.
It's awesome. I mean, I'll send a picture to Pete of that space, because I think people need to see that space.
Actually, I just came across one.
Amazing. Yeah. So it's like, but what a cool concept. And again, this is stuff we speak about every single time we catch up. Yeah. Is like, this place needs more stuff like that. Like the Gold Coast needs more stuff like that.
It's really hard to make it work. You've got to find the right people.
Exactly.
And I was fortunate enough. I mean, I can't take credibility for coming up with that concept. That was something that I just got involved with. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to work alongside people that were happy to have me and let me do my own thing with it. Yeah, it's so cool. But yeah, more spaces like that, they're going to bring more people together.
Absolutely.
And the hairdressing industry and barbering industry is such a social network. Yeah. And it can fit into anything like that. We used to have guest tattooists there and that type of thing. It was so a cool hub. So it was a very interesting period of my life.
It's a funny one. Again, going back to what you were saying about how you consult with people, right? My kind of first thing that I can remember, like not being scammed, but somebody like their consultation was amazing, and I just went, I love that. Right? Was a tattoo. Sure. So my back, which is covered, I had this massive idea of like a family tree, and I was gonna have the names of like my nephews and nieces, my sisters and everything on my back. Don't know why I wanted a family tree, but there you go. I was just like, that was my vision, and I was like, that would be so cool. Been talking to this guy for so long, came in and he was like, this is Dan as well, who he may listen to this, I'm not too sure, or we'll share it with him. He owns his own tattoo shop now, but he was an apprentice at the time. Okay. Amazing, super talented. And he's come in and he was like, I've been thinking about your family tree and stuff like that, man. And he goes, do you know what would look awesome? And he's like, a skull. And I went, skull? And he's like, oh yeah, I've actually drawn one up. And he showed me it and I was like, oh, shit, that does look cool. And I'm like, but my personality and everything, I ain't skulls.
Yeah.
Like it's so funny when people see it and they go like, why a skull? And I go, funny story actually.
Yeah.
But that was the way that he was explaining it to me, like how it would look in the end, like we do this and this. I was like, oh, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. So I remember going home and mum seeing it and she was like, oh, did you go with the family tree? And I'm like, not really. It's just a big skull on my back, which is hilarious. But yeah, it's amazing. So leading into tattoos, obviously you have 1 or 2 tattoos.
Sure.
So a couple of things. How was that seen in the hairdressing industry? Because when I was brought up, just when mum used to educate, again, we're talking like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing hairdressers with tattoos.
Yeah.
It was always that clean. They looked very professional. Like,
yeah. So I guess like where I lie at the moment, or when I first came into the industry, was somewhere in between on the end of that,
And then
where
the,
hairdressers were just like completely manicured and right, copycat and that type of thing. And then before just going completely free wheeled, right? So there was definitely still, and the favorite thing I like about the hairdressing industry is like you genuinely can, you have free reign to be and look however you choose to,
exactly.
Right? And through that, the beauty of that is you attract like-minded and like-styled people.
Absolutely.
And you build cool network and clientele based off of like your own vibe.
Yeah.
Which is cool. You know, and there's no rules or regulations over how you present yourself. And so
absolutely,
that's a cool side of the job.
It is,
and that's why it attracts like, you know, it attracts a certain breed, the hairdressing industry, and generally creative people, generally social people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's a very interesting one. Right. Tattoos. What's your best tattoo? What's your worst tattoo?
Okay.
I know this.
This is a good one, actually. Yeah. So I'd say for humor's sake, my worst tattoo, which you can no longer see, is covered under, and it actually good segue into my first shop, because it was done at my first shop on I think we had like a launch night or promo night or something like that. And so it was done on the inner bicep, which is now blacked over from another design. But I was supposed to get tattooed, I reckon, about 7 p.m. first up. And it was a flash sheet, and I think I had this really cool kind of like blackwork vase picked out. By the time I got tattooed, it was probably about 11 p.m. I was pretty slaughtered by then, right?
I was going to say, it would have been so sober.
Yeah. So I changed my mind. By the time I got on the needle, I picked like a live nude stripper neon sign, right? And so that was kind of, so that was one of my first ones on the inner bicep there. So that was, I wouldn't even say it was a bad tattoo. Actually, genuinely one of my favorite tattoos. Yeah. But it just, over the course of me getting tattooed more and a certain kind of theme arised, it clashed too much. Yeah. So
stood out.
Favorite tattoo. Favorite tattoo. It's interesting because anyone who's got like multiple tattoos or was quite heavily tattooed, will generally find that they all kind of have a certain different angle. Not necessarily they have to have meaning, but they're a point in your life that you got them, right? Yeah. And so when you quite tattoo, they actually show you almost like a story or a progression of your life, and it's really interesting. Yeah. And it almost tells your own story, right? To yourself. It's very like, my tattoos are kind of, you know, some are just, I guess, a bit more random and aesthetically based, but some like have a certain meaning to me. So I would say, to be honest, like my favorite tattoos would probably be my tarot cards on the front of my shins. Yeah. That would probably be some of my favorite ones.
That's cool.
At the moment, I'm kind of really into like scratchy blackwork stuff. So some of my like my head tattoos and that type of thing, just thick, bold lines and quite organic. Some of this stuff and some of my blast overs on my arms. So that's what I'm into these days, rather than like anything overly manicured or curated. Yeah. So, yeah.
Isn't that funny how like I find that's happening in hair as well? Like, you know, when I first, again, I shouldn't do this.
It is.
But I'm going to send Pete a picture of how I used to get my hair done. As you've seen, my blonde locks. Thanks, Mum. So something like that, where I used to straighten my hair. I used to make sure every single strand of hair was perfect, right? Yeah. And now I'm completely the opposite. If it looks perfect, I'm like, oh no, this looks shit. Yeah. I'm like, I want to make it look messy, like we always speak about. So
I mean, a good kind of like link into that is something that I'm really about with my cutting, how I like to explain it, the style, if I have to try and simplify it, is like cut to wear styles.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, styles that are organic, they're really well executed, but they're lived in and natural, and they still have that crispness to them and that sharpness to them, and that execution, but they just look a little bit like, got a bit of grit to them as well. And I think that's where hair's going for both guys and girls. And I think that's why, I hate kind of saying this, where the mullet is so like popular at the moment.
Yeah.
And even like the shag cut and stuff like that. It's because it's just something that's so against your typical groomed, like 50s style haircut. Absolutely. Which was in only a few years ago, by the way. So that you can see how quickly the styles have changed from like side part slick to, gritty, salty mullets and that type of thing. So, yeah.
What's your style for 2022?
My style, just in general, and I will take this to my grave, is the 90s middle part undercut.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I don't have a thick hairline anymore. But if I did, without a doubt, and I still try and talk people into it, it's not a style that you see getting around too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the mad undercut with a middle part straight down the center, and
that's
sick. It's
that
like
cool.
almost
Maybe
like
we should grow that.
Almost like I was thinking about it. Even like kind of like inspiration, 90s grunge.
Yeah.
Like I'm down with that. I like all the different styles, but I would say that would be my favorite. Yeah. What's coming in?
That was my next question.
Yeah. What's coming in is I would say again we're going more back, and it's following the kind of pendulum going back into more salon based services, and I think it's I think it's more scissor cutting, more mid-length, more long hair on guys. Even if guys like to wear their hair short, even if it's like, a low fade or a low undercut or clean around the ears, I think there's still that element of length and texture and looseness to the styles.
Yep.
And it's that connection between, classic, well-executed barber techniques and that creative element can only be kind of developed through like hairdressing techniques.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where the connection is, and that's where all top barbers and hairdressers at the moment, they understand this and they kind of implement it. So that's what I try to do too.
I love it.
So
all right, last part, I promise, right? So we can
easy.
go and do work.
I'm on fire. So it's all good.
All right, cool. So let's hear goals for 2022.
Yeah.
And then maybe let's go
Wicked.
2 and 5 years. Let's just say that. What's your kind of goals, right?
Okay.
Personally and career.
Well, I mean, this is an interesting one for me, and hard for me to kind of answer in a short version.
Yeah.
And for a good reason, because there's just, and credit to you, and I do appreciate kind of like coming on board here. It's just there's so many different lanes and opportunities that have opened up, and it's like going from like spending 110% of my life energy and resources and money on one isolated business. Which is essentially, like, if I'm being honest, business, it's not my strong suit.
Yeah. Right.
So I spent a lot of time and resources kind of like putting into something that is probably not what I'm strongest at. And now, given the chance to kind of disconnect from that and bite the bullet for finding a new direction within the industry, I've been able to kind of explore areas such as education, which is primarily my focus now.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've wanted to get into a few years, but I haven't had the time to do it, or the energy to do it, or even the platform to do it, like I do here with you. So, I would say for this year, I'm doubling down in education.
Yep.
And just collaboration. Like, I'm really about collaborating with people that are on the same wavelength. Not necessarily people that have the same skill set, but even more so people that have different skill sets, but we have similar visions. So it's this year's going to be a really cool, fun, creative year, as opposed to some stagnant business years that I've experienced recently. So so goal for this year would be to develop myself through the education lens. Mm-hmm. I'd like to kind of help expand the academy here.
Yep.
I really see myself moving, as we've spoken to.
Absolutely.
Down south, like down Byron Way.
Yep.
And setting up something really cool there. Some sort of collaborative space, something that's education based, and just essentially an extension of the academy here. Yeah. So that's where I'm at the moment. And through that, we've already seen other people come on board, other people in the industry, and you know, you've made a lot of really cool connections lately as well that, you know, are going to benefit the whole academy and that type of thing, and everyone working here. So I'm really interested to kind of just, get on board that. Yeah, that's where I'm at the moment, and just kind of, look at a new area of the industry and kind of like spend a bit of time in the education area.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's pretty interesting. I said this when Mum came on the podcast, because she was like, oh, I'm really like thankful because she can now start reining back the hours a little bit instead of this, right? And same way you were saying, like, oh, I'm thankful that you can do, well, we couldn't do that without you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not just you yourself, all of our educators. And this is what I try and say all the time. It's like, we're doing really cool stuff as a college, but that's because of you guys. Like, I can have great ideas, but without the team behind me going, I can help with that.
Yeah.
Or I can do this, I can do that. Like, this thing doesn't do anything. Like,
for sure.
Same as what you said, that you were so open, like, I'd love to move to Byron. All right, cool. Well, let's open one in Byron.
Well, I guess it's nice just being able to disconnect from, say, a bricks and mortar style setup and just keeping myself light and creative for the first time in a while again. And just kind of, weird hearing myself say this, but just kind of go with the flow. Yeah. Right. And just go where opportunity takes and where lanes open up. And, you know, on the other end of, you know, what you just said about it doesn't work without us here. It's like, it's vice versa with yourself. It doesn't, you know, I can't have that creativity and that opportunity and that kind of transparency and without a strong platform. Yeah. And that's how the two work together. Yeah. So both sides are important. So and that's why we work well together.
Cool. Yeah. Personal goals
for this year. I'm going,
because I know you're smashing your training, which I love.
I'm back training again. I had I guess through kind of the last murky COVID years, probably like fell off the wagon a little bit, and just trying to keep business afloat and myself personally afloat as well. To be honest, I'm looking to get back into grounding myself through some fitness and training, and kind of looking into really exploring getting back into some like more holistic style meditation and breathwork and stuff like that. So and just kind of like just meeting new people and like having some different experiences in new places. So that's kind of just getting my kind of personal life back on track and filling the cup up there. Absolutely, is where I'm at the moment.
That's sick.
Yeah,
I love it.
And just obviously just kind of just enjoying educating, enjoying running classes and meeting people through that as well. Like, I really enjoy it.
No, it's cool. So, it's great to see. And again, I say from an outsider looking in, even though I own the college, but just seeing already the students who you've connected with, and it's like, that's so cool, because I remember when I was studying, and it's like, if I seen the trainer in the street now, I don't even think I'd say hello to them, because they treated me like absolute crap. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing as well, which I love. It's like, I could go and have a drink with any of these guys. Yeah. And I love that. And I think you feel exactly the same. It's like, like I get along with them on that level as well. Yeah, we are education. We're teaching them correctly and stuff. But there is that, like, we are human beings. Yeah. And we can have that interaction as well, which is superb.
And I think a good story to finish on, just to kind of tie all that in. And it's kind of taken me back through the timeline to the first salon that I worked at. Having my boss at the time, he ran a really tight operation at this salon, and it was pretty hard but fair, and he was really cool to work for. But he pretty much raised me in the hairdressing game, you know, and I was like young, and had a lot of energy. I was probably a little bit off the rails at the time. At the same time, but I really threw myself into my work as well. I really enjoyed it, but I was probably like a bit of a naughty kid, and he used to always say to me, we used to have like one-on-one meetings all the time. He used to have that with all the staff. And he used to always say, he goes, I know you're going to have your own salon one day. And I could never see it at the time. He goes, I know you're going to have it. He goes, I know it doesn't make sense what I'm telling you right now. He's trying to pull me up, which was all the time. Look, I doubt he'd ever see this, but if he did, he'd just laugh. And he said, he was always at me, it's not going to make sense right now, but it will one day. It will one day.
That's cool.
Now, after my second shop, we actually, unfortunately, I disconnected from that shop. Like, we had a little disagreement, as you do after a few years, right? I went my own direction, he went his. And I never really got to thank him properly and I never really understood what he put into me at the time. I was too young at the time and too unaware.
Absolutely.
And it was probably, we didn't speak for a while, and then about 3 years later, or 4 years later, even longer, after I had my second shop, which was even harder than my first.
Yeah.
And that was when I brought on, I did a tattoo studio and a salon collaboration with the tattooists at the time. So we did like a joint business, and that was a hard business. That was another, series of lessons. And I brought on a couple of soul traders, right, to work under me. Yep. So it was the first time I had, my first experience with having people in the business under me as, I guess, technically staff. And within the first 3 weeks, everything that he ever said to me, it came rushing back, and it all made sense. And I hit him up. I messaged him. We were friends. I don't even know if we're friends on Facebook. I remember messaging big paragraph, just going,
love that,
mate, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I said, thank you so much. Like, I'm sorry how things ended.
That's
blah, blah, blah.
That's
I can't even remember what I said. I went into detail, right?
Yeah.
And it all clicked for me. And then I wasn't sure if I was going to reply for him or what. And I just get in caps locks, ha, 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 ha. Like, and that was it. And then he was just like water under the bridge, mate. Yeah. All good. Like, he goes, he even said, if you ever want to debrief, like, hit me up.
Yes.
And I'm like,
that's so cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Absolutely.
And that's a part of being an educator, I think, is having that kind of, that foresight into people, just to kind of provide them with value and hope that it will come around eventually. So
I love it.
So I
that's
thought
awesome.
That was a good one to end on.
That is a good story to end on. I'm glad you did end on that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
No worries.
Like, I know we're doing so much stuff, which is great.
Yeah,
so,
and
I want you guys to like interact with Kieren more, because he'll be doing a hell of a lot more stuff this year as well. Yeah. We've got so many masterclasses and whatnot that's going on. I'm just trying to think. I might be able to get Pete to put the calendar up maybe on here as well to have a look.
And I promise I'm getting an education-based social media up.
Yeah, I love it.
ASAP, actually working on it this week. So there's going to be heaps of free educational content. So we'll start pumping that out as well.
And we'll plug that on there as well. I'll make sure Pete tags Kieren in, and then we can start connecting you guys with Kieren via that as well.
Feel free to contact me via there as well. I'm more than happy. Any questions, anything. That's kind of the whole point of the platform that I want to create.
Absolutely.
It's specifically to just provide content for people and just a point of contact.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Awesome. Again, man.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening, watching, whatever you want. See you all soon.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
That coffee dehydrated me. But this is number 6. How's that?